Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Roots and Branches. I'm Christine Mola, your host. And in our last episode with Darlene Listro, we talked about regulating the nervous system, creating space for healing to land in the body. And once we begin to slow down, something powerful becomes visible, our natural rhythm. Because growth isn't linear. Healing isn't constant expansion, and becoming isn't meant to be rushed. So today's conversation is about sacred cycles, the seasons of growth, rest, and renewal that shape not only our healing, but our lives. And what happens when we when we stop resisting those cycles and begin honoring them instead. This is a conversation that blends science, because we have a doctor to my left, intuition, and lived experience. And I'm so glad and I'm so honored to have a wonderful woman who embodies all three of these things. Right. And today I am joined by Dr. Beata Harasim. So that is how I Americanized her name. But please say it in your beautiful language.
Oh, Harasim.
Harasim. And I love that. And Dr. Harasim, Beata, my loving Beata, she is the founder of Radiant Health and Wellness and a deeply respected voice in the holistic integrative health world. So for over 2 decades, Dr. Beata, she has been devoted to helping others understand the body, restore balance, and approach wellness from a truly whole person perspective. And her path deepened even further through her own journey, personal journey into motherhood with her beautiful 8-year-old daughter. Time has flown, who had early health challenges, right? And brought you through that. So it became a powerful catalyst for you, expanding your understanding of healing, and not just clinically, but holistically. And I had the pleasure of connecting with Dr. Beata through our organization, the Community Healing Arts Collective, which is CHAC, through the Bloom Group. And that was a few years ago when we had the Bloom Center down in Farmington, right? And both personally and professionally, we have connected. And her presence is always just a warm, loving hug. So I am, again, so excited to have you here today. Welcome. So today's conversation, we are talking about sacred cycles, seasons of growth, and goodness knows you've been through it, right? So I think we're just going to start this conversation of where we meet ourselves in that space of how the body naturally operates in cycles and the connection physically, emotionally, and energetically. So let's start there. Does that sound good?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Christine. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you.
And yes, these seasons and cycles that all of us experience are so crucial to not just understanding our health and our body, but our lives as a whole.
Sure.
And when we look at this from a holistic and integrative perspective, we realize that the body is not separate from everything else. The body is actually what integrates everything. Mm-hmm. So often we are taught to almost ignore our body,
absolutely,
or see it as something that's broken or needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And really, it's our innate wisdom communicating with us.
Yeah.
And it's our inner knowing that's coming through to help us align with these phases and cycles and stages that we may be going through.
So interesting you say that, because we don't always trust our bodies, but really we're always telling each other now, listen, trust your body. If your body is saying this, listen, rest, all of the above, right? Yeah. And that drives everything through our, so we often celebrate, and this is one of the notes that I took here too. We don't always understand what's supporting that and where it's coming from.
Yes.
Right.
And I think when we look at society and culture as a whole, this has been something that we've been kind of normalized to think that we just have to suppress symptoms, just take some medication, just, push through. And that's where the misalignment happens. Yeah. And the body is made for balance. Mm-hmm. So it will try to maintain that balance and that homeostasis as long as it can. But sometimes when we push too much, when we push past the boundaries, then the body really starts speaking louder. And that's where, people end up with health conditions, mental health challenges, with chronic conditions, with symptoms that sometimes don't make sense to allopathic medicine, where people often say, well, all my labs were normal, but I still feel horrible. And that's the piece that there's something in misalignment. It's your body literally communicating to you. And again, when we go to a traditional doctor, they say, no, it's just stress. It's, just, you'll be okay.
Right.
When we don't listen to that and we don't learn to really understand what the body's telling us and decode what it's saying, that's when things worsen. Right. And that misalignment, again, has implications beyond just our body and our health. It ripples out through our lives
and
as
just
well.
to sort of dial back to those doctor visits, and we were just having this conversation the other day about when, as a woman, as a female, when we go to the doctor, we're told those things. It's just stress. Don't worry about it. You just need a little more rest, maybe a little medication here, a little medication there. And it's actually, it dilutes our trust in our own body and us hearing these messages. Don't worry about it. And, we don't really hear the language of, oh, it's all in your head anymore. I think many have grown out of using that language because it's just so ridiculous, to be honest with you, with lack of a better term. But still, the concept is we don't have to worry about it so much.
Right.
And that's what brings on our conditions, makes them even worse, right?
Absolutely.
Mental illness, untreated mental illness will go on for so long. Physical illnesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
And tying in those cycles, our body naturally functions cyclically. So when we look at our biological, just daily rhythms that we have, the circadian rhythm, for example, we look at women's cycles. Men have cycles as well. They're different than women's. We're looking at hormones in that sense. We're also looking at nervous system regulation cycles and phases. We're looking at life stages, stages of womanhood. So going through, there's many different traditions that have different, numbers, but just generally we can think of it as maidenhood to motherhood to the transition phase of menopause, and then transitioning and becoming the wise woman. And all of those, women are meant to show up and move differently through those phases. But life often doesn't, it pushes back from us tapping into that and honoring that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the motherhood for a minute. I'd really love to share with our listeners your journey with your daughter, because that was major. So, our audience here isn't just we have many generations in here. So let's talk about the challenges you had with your daughter and you physically, the challenges that you had for a minute. So share.
Yeah, a lot of what I teach is from lived experience, quite honestly. And so a lot of it began when I stepped into motherhood and having a baby with health challenges.
Emotional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And through that, there was a blessing. And the blessing was discovering my own health challenges that were buried deep below, that I was ignoring, that I was suppressing.
And let's honor that for a minute. Every time we talk about it, it is very emotional, right? And your daughter's 8, but it still brings all of that back up.
Right.
Yeah.
And through that, discovering the misalignments, discovering and going through major life transitions, divorce, becoming a single mom, multiple moves, relationships, leaving my old career. And those stages of the journey are what's allowed me to reflect back and see where I wasn't listening to my body. Because there were times where I was holding a lot physically, emotionally, mentally, even energetically and spiritually, and I kept pushing. And I know many women experience this as well, not because they're resisting the rest sometimes or resisting seeing what is, but because of external pressures, right? We have roles, we have expectations, we have responsibilities that we need to fulfill. And at the same time, the body capacity is something that we don't always look at and we don't always respect and honor sometimes, because so many women, we push ourselves, we deplete ourselves because we need to meet these expectations. We need to fulfill these roles. We need, we have little kids that we need to take care of sometimes.
And one of the previous episodes, again, with Stephanie, we were talking about the chameleon, releasing the chameleon and the masks that we wear through our journeys and in motherhood, in singlehood, in divorce, post-divorce, post-marriage, we are taking masks on and off every day. And in that cycle, we are ignoring very specific signs. And again, it leads us to mental health issues, physical issues that we were just talking about, right? So you were taking masks off and on continuously and not sure which ones needed to be picked up to keep you going, right?
Right. And that's the thing. It's almost, we talk about balance often. And I had this conversation actually years ago that's really relevant for right now is it's almost this harmony and flow. Yeah. Because when the expectation is that we're going to perform the same way, we're going to move the same way, we're going to achieve the same thing through all of these phases and cycles, one that's not realistic. That's what society expects us to do. That's what cultural nowadays. And when we really step back and tap into the traditional way of perceiving things and looking at things, we need to recognize that it's okay for us to move differently through these cycles and to honor our body when it is asking for certain things and communicating with us.
For sure.
And even though there are external circumstances, right, that we have to be aware of, we can't ignore that. We have to be grounded in reality. And when we work with the body, we can increase the capacity. So regulating the nervous system, creating internal safety, supporting our body physically can actually expand the capacity so that no matter what's going around us, we can still fulfill the responsibilities that we need, but not at the expense of our body.
And can I bubble that for a second? Rest. The season of rest. Yes. And not the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, but the day, the hour, from the mini nap, the siesta that most people need. Rest speaks to us, right? And it gives us that moment.
Yes. And it can look different for so many people because we need to, again, fit that into the stage and cycle that we're in. So I remember when my daughter was breastfeeding, I mean, she was a Velcro baby. She was glued to me almost 24/7, right? And so I would hold her and she would nap. And that was my rest time. And let me tell you how much I wanted to fight that and resist it. And for the moms who are listening to this, who may be saying, I could never hold my baby during naps, I'm actually really grateful that my daughter was so strong-willed and so adamant that she would not let me put her down, because it forced me to slow down and to actually listen to my body. I didn't realize how nourishing that was to my mind, body, and soul to stop,
connect,
to rest, to be present with her, and how healing that would be for my overall journey.
Generations, not all of us breastfed. My daughter did, and my granddaughter is definitely a little Velcro baby. I bottle fed back in the early 90s, but I joke with my daughters that, when you have the little drunk baby, from having all of her nourishment, mommy would be falling asleep like, at 2 a.m, 2 p.m, whenever it was, but it was the time of rest. You knew that was coming. You couldn't wait for that baby to be hungry so that you could just sit for a minute and gather your senses back, knowing that you were going to be pushing forward and doing whatever it is that you were going to be doing for that day, So in the same turn, that connection has always been there for us as moms, right?
Yes. Yeah. And honestly, I resisted. I fought that because my typical nature, I think, is an achiever, right? Yes. It's type A personality. So for me to be like, no, I need to slow down and just stop and be present and not worry about the dishes in the sink right now and not, go on to the next thing was very foreign. It did not feel natural, actually, to me. I had to fight that to be like, nope, my baby she's not giving me any other options. So I have to follow her lead. And again, I could look back and see my conditioning through the years. And for many, this has been brought up through childhood, where we were taught that we can only get love if we're achieving. We're only enough. We're only worthy if we're wearing
things. Our badge of honors, badge of busy. Yeah.
And it's the shift from recognizing that I don't have to be doing. Right. I can be, and I'm still worthy. I'm still enough. And it's that connection to the body. That's when true healing happens, when we have that awareness. And it is this shifting from the divine masculine that so many of us women are really focused on. And just, again, culturally, we've been conditioned to always be doing. And taking that step back to be makes such a difference. Tap into our divine feminine, and finding that harmony for us is really what creates true integrative health.
Absolutely. And finding that sweet spot, which I speak of all the time, in balancing our masculine and feminine, because we all have that in us, and we need to find that sweet spot in order to just move gently through our ebb and flow systems, And for all the young women that are watching this, that are moms, or listening to this, that are moms, or even, the grandmas taking care of their kids, there is, we can take that badge of honor, badge of busy. Keep the badge of honor. Take the badge of busy off and give yourself a moment. And it's okay. Right. And it's okay to be in that rest period. And it creates the renewal in us. So I want to sort of shift over to that renewal and rebirth feeling. I mean, that happens cyclically as well. Yes. All right. Internal seasons. So when we're moving from the variations of motherhood, we are now leaving something behind and rebirthing something else.
Yes.
Right.
And I wanted just to connect it to that sense of growth. Yeah. Because again, many of us think that growth is this moving forward, this doing, this momentum. And sometimes we need to stop and understand that sometimes being is growth. Mm-hmm. There is growth in tapping into that presence. And that actually is the catapult for the rebirth and the renewal that you just mentioned.
100%. And this is how Roots and Branches, this season 1 was created from a pause that I took, but many other men and women have taken, that it was an entire year of sometimes just stepping back. You have to step back in order to move forward. And that is growth. That is some of the best, most deep growth that we could have.
Right. Absolutely. And then what happens with the renewal is we're not like going back to the version that we were. We take all of those lived experiences and we literally become the next version of ourselves that can hold all of that. And that has a greater capacity now. So from a body perspective, right, our nervous system can now hold all of those experiences. And now we have the wisdom to move forward in a different way. We become a different person and our identity literally shifts, which allows us to move forward.
Literally shifts. And the physical. And you're right. Personally speaking, because we can only speak for ourselves, but I've seen it in others and in clients, is when we take that mental focus, that conscious awareness to shift and really honor ourselves, the physical changes too.
Right.
There's physical changes, the mind, the body, and the soul connect. Love that. So with that being said, when we return, so we're actually returning to our most strong, most clear version of ourselves that we began with.
Right.
That makes sense?
It does.
And we come from those clear eyes, and it's such a beautiful journey. So as we wrap this beautiful conversation, there's so much to talk about with all of our guests, but what do we want? What's the message, that legacy lasting message that we can say to our viewers today? Send them off with this beautiful note today.
Yes. And absolutely, that essence is within us always. We started with that and we're returning to that. And especially with physical health challenges. Mm-hmm. So they can show up in so many different ways, hormonally, skin, mental health, energy levels. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night, whatever it is physically that's going on to you. The most important thing to remember is that the body is not separate. It is always communicating with you. And it is not broken. It is not something that needs to be fixed. Your body has innate wisdom, and when we start to understand and listen to it, we can gain alignment, and everything flows easier. And one thing that I know sometimes people are like, well, how do I do this in practice, right? How do I do this in real life? Is just changing the question that you're asking yourself. So instead of this like, well, okay, I have this diagnosis, or I'm feeling like this, what do I do next? Pausing and asking, what is it that my body's asking for?
Yeah. Can we say that, because of the hypochondriac in all of us, right? We'll immediately grab our phones. We'll immediately start saying, okay, my left shoulder is going this way. What's wrong? And we'll come up with all of these diagnoses. All right. Some of them are actually kind of, helpful, but it's really like you're saying, and what we're saying is in the pause, just sit, ask the questions and connect and listen.
Right. Absolutely. And when we start to understand what the body's communicating, then we can move forward in alignment instead of forcing something or, again, ignoring it or suppressing it and just taking a pill and going on with our day.
Exactly.
Because that's when, again, the conditions get worse. That's when chronic conditions set in. And the body will compensate for as long as it can, and it'll just keep getting louder and louder until it can't anymore.
It will keep getting louder and louder. And even in that calm, so we're taking a step back, we're listening to our body. And then when we wind up talking to our physicians or whomever our healthcare providers are, we are actually having a conversation. We're not just blasting out fear, having it come from that fear place. And like we said, regulating our nervous system in all ways. And there's ways to get help from that. So with that being said, delightful conversation, much needed conversation with Dr. Beata. And as you're moving through your system and things are popping up, we will have the contact information for Dr. Beata in our show notes, but always reach out, always ask, and there's a helping hand somewhere, right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to help, and so honored again to have this conversation. I know it's important for many women to hear because I can feel that there are so many going through this right now and feeling this misalignment and not quite sure what to do.
And it's part of the journey, and it's okay. And it's okay to ask for help. And I think we're really getting that message. So with that, my dear friend, thanks so much for being here. And for anybody that wants to get a hold of Dr. Beata, please do. She's a magical person to chat with. Her contact information will be in the show notes, as well as mine, as usual. And until I get to see you again and we see you again, stay rooted, stay rising, and always stay blooming.